Hello, I'm Odin, and Marvel decided it was time for another Thor movie, so I suppose I should make another Thor prop. I've already made Thor's hammer from the Dark World, and I made the version from Ragnarok. So now how about if I make the reformed version from Thor Love and Thunder? I often get asked if I would ever revisit a video that I've done before and make it again. This seemed like a perfect opportunity, and I'm going to do it pretty much exactly the same way, but with a twist. I'm going to be making Thor's hammer again. I already made one once, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I'm going to make my new one almost exactly the same way. I've got a pair of yoga blocks that I'm going to use for the hammer. I've got my wooden dowel and a piece of leather that I'm going to use for the handle. But what I'm going to do differently is exactly what I said I didn't have in the first video. So there's a pretty intricate trim that goes around the face on each side of Mjolnir. I've got a template that I've made, and you can see that it's really very ornate. And to cut this out of foam is going to be nearly impossible. I've got a friend that's got a laser cutter, and I could actually engrave the foam. We've tried this, it does work. But I'm sure all of you would say I was cheating because I'm using a laser cutter who has a $5,000 laser cutter machine. I actually don't, I just happen to have access to one. But now that I have a laser machine right here in the shop, you bet that's what I'm gonna do. Is it cheating? No, I learned that the hard way, and I'll tell you about it in a little bit. And just like the first video, I'm gonna start with a leather handle. I was able to etch the stepped chevron pattern right onto the leather and cut it out. Plus, I've already cut out my hand strap and decorative top piece. All the leather is stained with 2 coats of water-based leather stain. And when it was dry, I paint the silver accent lines right onto the handle. Now this is not only faster, but it's easier than the raised leather rings that I did before. And after it's glued to a 1 1/8 inch wooden dowel, it's going to be much more comfortable to hold on to. Before I glue anything to the leather, it gets a top coat of sealer. To make the head of the hammer, I found a pair of yoga blocks at a thrift store. These are solid EVA foam, and they're just about 3 inches by 6 inches by 9 inches, so together they're just a little bit bigger than the head of the hammer. I applied 2 coats of contact cement to one side on each of the blocks. I allowed the first coat to dry before applying the second. I speed the dry time by using my heat gun. Contact cement gets sticky after it's dry. Then I carefully stick the 2 blocks together. Now they're not exactly the same size, but these 2 are pretty close. I trim the blocks to be the same size on my bandsaw. Then I set my miter gauge to 60 degrees and cut the angles around the ends of the hammer. I can then tilt the bandsaw table to 45 degrees and trim the side corners. In the end, this foam block is about 108 millimeters square on the ends, and then 160 millimeters by 103 millimeters on each side. And all the corners need to be trimmed down with both the 60-degree miter and the 45-degree table tilt. These blocks are a little smaller than the first set that I worked with, so I need to fill the indents on the sides. And after gluing the puzzle edges from some floor mat foam into the dents, I can cut off the excess on the bandsaw. While I was gluing it together, I was amused by how much this reminds me of those old flying toasters. I don't mind Mjolnir with wings, but gotta cut these off because they're not supposed to be there. Kind of neat. One of the fun things with trying to design all the laser cut parts for doing this is I tried to do it before I cut this out, right? I was trying to be efficient, which for the most part I was. But now that I have the physical object, I'm gonna need to make some changes to my art because I honestly thought these panels were more trapezoidal. These are very, very square panels. So the single most important part for laser cutting, you know, the part when I wish I could have done it for this one, but instead I used a belt, that's the part I need to fix. I thought it was a trapezoid, but it's 108 millimeters all the way down. And so yeah, all right. I need to change that, and then I can start laser cutting all the pieces that go on the outside of this guy. Kind of exciting. It took much longer than I had anticipated to create the file for laser burning. The outlines all went pretty easily and quickly, but the scroll work that is on the ends and all the wraparound cracks and the holes and pockmarks took a long time to put together. And I was really trying to get them to all line up after the parts were glued together. But there is a benefit to all this, because once the laser was working and cutting and etching, I could finish working on the handle. Now, before I applied any glue to the dowel, I drew a center line to use as a guide for sticking the leather on straight. A couple of coats of contact cement, and I can carefully wrap the handle with a dyed, painted, and sealed leather grip. I use the handle from my Kershaw blade sharpener to smash the edges of the seam flat. The edges of the leather were a little stiff after being laser cut. Then I scrape the sealer off the end of the leather, so when I glue on the decorative top piece, it'll stick to the first layer of leather. And just like on my first hammer, I sand the corners of the handle as the first step for making the pommel. Now, to actually make the pommel, I heat a piece of 4mm styrene plastic until it's soft and very flexible. And then I set the hot plastic over a PVC pipe fitting, it's warm, and press the sanded end of the handle into the hot plastic. Now, this is the same idea as vacuum forming, just a bit simpler. I clean up the sides of the pommel until I have the shape that I want, and then cut 2 holes into the sides that are just wide enough for the leather strap to pass through. All right. One thing I remember was having to tape all this off so I could spray paint the piece silver, because I glued it on, I think, before I painted it. I'm not going to do that today. While the spray paint dries and the laser cutter cuts, I can use my bandsaw to make a notch at the end of the handle. This will let the leather fit inside of the end and not on top of it. The paint is dry, so I can glue the pommel on. I thread the leather through the holes and screw the strap into the pre-drilled hole that's on the end of the handle. Mix up some 5-minute epoxy and glue the pommel end onto the handle. The drywall screw secures the leather strap so the hammer can be swung around by the strap. A little super glue and a clamp keeps down any plastic that wants to stick out. Tandy Leather still sells the exact same Mjolnir conchos that I bought 5 years ago. And I bend the flat sides of the conchos to fit the round handle. Now, this is easier said than done, because these are cheap pop metal parts, which are easier to break than they are to bend. So I was trying to not do. I drill a 6mm hole on either side and superglue all the pieces of the conchos onto the handle. All right, I've got the handle done. Slightly new way. Oh, look, I put it on different. Oh, that's amazing. The whole strap is 90 degrees off. The point should go to the point. Okay, well, oops. All right, can't fix that now. Okay, maybe I won't permanently attach the handle just yet. I can make another one later on once I can buy more conchos from Tandy. It has been a while, but I have my first set of laser cut and etched hammer panels. So here's why I wanted to make this one again, is because much like when I talked about having the first one, I didn't have a laser printer or a laser cutter. I keep calling it a printer, it's a cutter or an engraver. Now I do, and so I wanted to make a new one with all the extra textures that I can get using the laser engraver. Pretty freaking happy with how this looks. Something I hadn't taken into account is how much time it takes to make the file to do the burning, right? It's like, oh, I'll just use the pattern I had before. I didn't have a pattern before, so I had to make the pattern up. Then I had to, it took way longer than I thought. So this isn't a shortcut, it's just more precise. Additionally, because it's just a 5-watt laser diode, it actually took about 5 hours to cut all this stuff out. I had to do a couple of different passes. So I'm already seeing with some test fitting that some of these pieces aren't gonna fit my physical thing, so I'm gonna glue the large panels on, do some measurements, and then recut the small panels. At least I can. More contact cement, and I stick the ends of the hammer on first. I use one of the ornate panels as a guide for sticking the top panel onto the yoga blocks, and then I use the long, small panels as guides for putting on all the big panels. That way the ends will line up. The bottom is 3 separate panels, and they need to match up with the notches on the angled sides. I did notice that all the angle panels I made are just a little too small. There's going to be gaps between them. Now, if I had hand cut these, I would have just made it work. But today, I can measure the distance between each unique panel, write it down on the back of them, and then adjust the part size in Lightburn. Now I'm adding 1 millimeter to each part in addition to my new measurements because the foam seems to shrink just a little bit when it's being laser cut. I also changed all the end panels out as well because nothing fit like I thought it would. While the laser did the burn, burn, cut, cut thing, I drilled a hole in the yoga block for the wooden handle to fit. And that decorative strap hides the circle cut when it's attached. I need to grind an angle into all the side panels because they all attach at an angle. And they all fit nicely right where I want them. And you can see the laser burnt cracks continue over each of the decorative foam panels. Some of them takes just a little more smooshing to get them to fit. Almost. All right. One more set of 8 pieces. So I've got all my corners. Yeah, all 8 are here. I honestly thought this was going to be a different shape to begin with, just because of the way things went together before. I thought I was going to need a shape more like this one, and then I actually changed it to this. Hard to see the difference, but the end is a little tiny bit wider. What I actually ended up needing is a legit triangle. So, all right, I'm on version 3 or 4 of the corners. I can just put these in, I hope, and I'm kind of done with the body. I grind angles into the sides. Most of the triangles fit right the first time. And any seam that contact cement can't hold together can be sealed with super glue. Okay. What I'm excited about is being able to get the texture that I want, where I want, and how I want. I didn't appreciate how much computer chair time that was going to take, but I'm here now. I just need to put the top circle on and then I can paint it. I had marked where I wanted the circle to fit. Now this is one piece that was cut from 6mm HD foam, and I changed the wording on the top very slightly. This one says, "Whosoever holds this hammer, if she be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." Now this is written in the Elder Furthark style, but it's just a letter-for-letter replacement of English, not a proper translation. Now I just need to seal it with black Plasti Dip paint and then spray paint it silver. Once the silver dries and is safe to touch, I can use black liquid shoe polish to weather the silver, almost instantly changing the look from Halloween toy to a decent cosplay prop. I make sure to wipe additional shoe polish into all the cracks and details on the hammer, because I really want to be able to see them easily. And I'm going to wait on gluing in the handle because I'm definitely going to be making a new one with the strap that goes the right way. Most of the material used in this video I already had in the shop. I put a list in the description. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. I definitely didn't give myself enough time, enough space to be able to put the project together. Basically, I started late and it took more time than I anticipated to get it done. So it took me a little bit longer than normal to get this particular video out, but that's okay because I'm really happy with what I ended up with. It was interesting how I thought by doing my own math, certain things were going to fit and I had to make adjustments. But the nice thing with using the laser cutter is I could make those adjustments and still get the same decorated piece. Doing it smooth, there's no reason to laser cut. You can just kind of cut what you need to fit together. I mean, they're fine, right? But getting a pattern that goes all the way around, yeah. And the secondary goal was, of course, figuring out how all these pieces fit together so I can make one of these that lights up. I did just like the other light up props I've done where it's got light glowing through the cracks. Yeah, I want to do that to this. First thing that came to mind the first time I saw this hammer is, I want to build that. Here's version 1. So now that I've figured out how the texture works, I can make one that lights up from the inside in a future video that'll come out closer to when the movie comes out, so stay tuned for that. And also, I'm really enjoying using the laser cutters for, well, getting the details on the parts, and I'm very very tempted to redo Stormbreaker with the correct handle and the correct size. So I think there's going to be a couple more Thor weapons coming out when the Thor movie comes out, because go figure, that's the type of thing that I do, right? Because I know there's going to be lots of different ways that you can make an Asgardian hammer, but this is how Odin makes. And don't worry, the handle, my error, yeah, I'm gonna fix it. It's gonna happen. I wanna make another one that lights up, so I just gotta get 4 more conchos instead of just 2. That's okay. So I got nearly all the crap out of my throat. I'm still gonna use a pair of yoga blocks like I did to make my first Mjolnir, which is like, what, right over here? Let's try this again. I want to thank Pat Snitwangzi, Victoria Poulter, Sweet Wisps, and all of my Patreon supporters. Patreon members at the $5 and above level get access to my private Discord, which includes weekly games with me, prop-related chat, and early access to live streams. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.